Welcome back to In Development. I'm Derek Lyons. I'm excited to be back here for episode 3 on this journey. So if you remember from last time, we were talking about starting a new game and the thought that we might begin the prototyping process kind of from the bottom up. So starting with gameplay, with the stuff that's closest to the player experience, and really experimenting and prototyping with some core game loops as a way of getting our game design going. So that is what I've been working towards, and what I thought I'd talk about today is the process of getting Unity going. Unity is going to be the tool that I'm using to do this exploration, and it's really the first time that I have worked with the Unity game engine in a serious, sustained capacity. So it's been an interesting process to get familiar with it. One thing that bears mentioning, especially if you're working on the Mac platform as I am, is the process of getting a Unity development environment set up and really tuned correctly to work productively on your Mac. Now, in the past, this has really been kind of a bear of a problem because Unity, of course, uses the C# language, which is a Microsoft-derived language. And as such, there has historically been essentially no support for C# in the kinds of major league professional grade IDEs that are available on the Mac platform. Unity, of course, comes bundled with its own editor. It comes with MonoDevelop. So that is a way that you can just install Unity and start working. But MonoDevelop, maybe not the most desirable thing to be working in for a serious project. I think it's great as a getting started tool or just for doing some quick explorations. But if you're used to working with modern IDEs, MonoDevelop just doesn't inspire confidence. There's nothing wrong with it per se, but it can struggle with some of the really basic stuff like code formatting and autocomplete. And once you've gone through that a couple of times, it just really makes you reluctant to trust the full weight of a major project to that particular editor. But in the past, there just wasn't any alternative. But things have gotten a lot better. And that improvement has really been driven by Microsoft releasing a new cross-platform version of Visual Studio called Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a new iteration on the Visual Studio formula, and it represents kind of a hybridization of some of the best parts of the full version of Visual Studio with some of the attractive features of lighter weight code editors, so something like Sublime Text, for example. Like Sublime Text, it's a pretty lightweight install, and you customize it by adding extensions to it to tune it to what specifically you're going to be working on. But it's also pulling in, very importantly, some of the really core developer-friendly aspects of Visual Studio professional version. So for example, it has a great built-in debugger, has great IntelliSense code completion. And what's even better is that with Unity, starting in Unity 5.5, the Unity editor knows about Visual Studio Code and makes the cross connection of the two quite easy. So it's really simple to tell Unity that you want to use Visual Studio Code as your editor of choice. I'm actually going to be posting a article on the In Development website that details a really thorough step-by-step tutorial for how you get these two things working together on the Mac, because there's a couple gotchas. It's mostly seamless, but there's a couple of things that you should be aware of. So hopefully that will be helpful to folks. But the bottom line is it's much easier than it used to be, and I was very quickly able to get to the point where I had a really solid, reliable development environment ready to go for Unity on my Mac, which is terrific. So once everything is set up, what's the experience like of working with Unity for the first time? Well, if you're someone who has worked as a software developer, there's a little bit of a learning curve, I think. I've had this conversation with a couple of developer friends, and we all kind of agree that the thing that takes a little bit of getting used to when you're working with a full-blown engine like Unity for the first time is that the engine doesn't really want you up in its business quite as much as you might be used to. So while you might be used to, when you're working from scratch, starting with, I'm going to write my core game loop, and then I'm gonna go up from there. So really starting with the where the rubber meets the road. It doesn't really work that way in Unity. And to be honest, you don't want it to work that way. That's kind of what you're paying for with a professional engine, is that you want the engine to take care of those details so that you can focus on the actual game part of your game. So Unity accomplishes that separation using a component model where you are going to express your game's logic and behavior using game objects, and then those game objects are just sort of hoovered up by the engine itself at runtime, and it manages all of the nitty-gritty of instantiating and getting those things on the screen. What you're responsible for specifying is how the game objects behave and work together. It's a little bit of a different mindset, but I found that once I reached a point of acceptance that I couldn't just drill into a source code file and see where the actual main loop was beginning, it makes a lot of sense. There's a intuitive quality to it that makes it relatively easy to adapt to. The stuff that I've been working on to teach myself Unity is all in the realm of procedural geometry. So what I mean by that is, say we have our humble cube. What does it mean in Unity to, from scratch, in code, express a shape like that and turn it into a 3D mesh that is compliant with the Unity graphics pipeline? What's been fun about this is that I've worked on these kinds of procedural geometry learning exercises in raw OpenGL before. So it's been really informative for me to see how the very lowest level expression of those things in OpenGL compares to the same process in Unity. And conceptually, the two processes are very, very similar. So to make my little cube here, you have to tell Unity where the vertices are. You have to tell Unity how to connect the vertices and triangulate them to turn it into a mesh. You have to express materials and normals and push all of that into the graphics pipeline, just as you would in OpenGL. What's great, though, is that some of the really tricksy, nitty-gritty parts of OpenGL about managing the state of your enum flags and things like that, you don't have to worry about in Unity. So that's a nice change. So why start with these procedural blocks? Well, it's a good conceptual starting point for one, but you will notice that actually this connects really well to the theme that we're going to be exploring in this first prototype with construction play, and the idea that it might be really interesting to build a game around this concept of a construction metaphor, snapping blocks together to make interesting objects in some sort of game world. So I'm hopeful that even though these are tutorial exercises at this point, they're going to flow really well into that more elaborated project. So speaking of flowing into the future, what's coming up over the next couple of weeks? The first thing that's very exciting is that this week is the 2017 Game Developers Conference. So I am super excited, as I am every year, to attend that. It's really just, and as a game developer, it's an amazing place to go, to just come away absolutely brimming with inspiration. And the thing that I think I love about it the most is that it's not just one part of the industry. It's the full cross-section, everything from the giant publishers and AAA studios to solo practitioners and indie developers who are working on one-person projects. And you really just get the full richness of that spectrum of creativity. And I'm confident it's going to be as great an experience as ever. And I think it's going to be fun in a couple of weeks to share some of my key takeaways and talk about some of the big themes that I saw represented at the conference this year. Then, of course, it's going to be plunging into this prototyping process for the construction play game concept that we talked about. In the coming weeks, we will be looking at actual code running on a screen from this game prototype, and I'm excited to start sharing that stuff. I am going to be updating this channel. Here's my goal and my commitment is to get a video up on this channel every 2 weeks, which is going to be a profound change from the every 2 month cadence that we've had up to this point. But I really want to shift things so that this starts to turn into a more real-time channel of communication. So that's what I'm going to be working on. In addition to those updates here, if you've looked at the In Development website, which is indevelopment.io, that site is going to be updating every week. So there will be a quicker cadence of content there. So you can check the website, you can follow me on Twitter, And above all, please subscribe to the channel. If you're enjoying this process, I would love to have you come along as a subscriber as we continue this game creation journey. So I think that's it for this short and sweet episode. I'm really looking forward to seeing you after GDC, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.